Your narcissistic friend isn't just toxic. They're actively studying your weaknesses to maintain control over you. They remember every insecurity you've shared, every fear you've expressed, and they're using this intimate knowledge as psychological ammunition. Niccolò Machiavelli discovered this exact pattern of manipulation in Renaissance courts 500 years ago, and what he found will completely change how you see friendship dynamics. By the end of this video, you'll have a step-by-step strategy to safely break free from even the most dangerous narcissistic friend without them even realizing what's happening until it's too late. Maybe you're dealing with a friend who somehow always makes everything about them. You start telling them about a promotion at work, and within 2 minutes, they're talking about their career struggles. You mention feeling stressed, and suddenly they're listing all the ways their life is more stressful than yours. Perhaps you've noticed that every conversation becomes a performance where they're the star, and you're just the captive audience applauding their latest drama. Or you might be asking yourself questions like, how did I become so drained by someone who's supposed to care about me? Why do I feel like I'm walking on eggshells around them? When did helping a friend start feeling like a hostage situation? Here's what probably happened. You met someone incredibly charismatic. They seemed genuinely interested in your life, remembered details about your stories, and made you feel seen in a way that felt almost magical. They quickly became your go-to person for advice, validation, and social connection. But somewhere along the way, the dynamic shifted. Slowly, subtly, you became their emotional support system while they became your emotional drain. If you've ever noticed that you feel mentally exhausted after spending time with them, or that you find yourself rehearsing conversations before seeing them, you're experiencing what psychologists call narcissistic abuse. But here's what conventional therapy won't tell you. This isn't accidental. This isn't just someone with boundary issues or communication problems. This is someone who has unconsciously or consciously studied your emotional triggers, your insecurities, your loyalty patterns, and your guilt mechanism. They know exactly which buttons to push to make you feel selfish for setting boundaries. They've mapped your psychological territory better than you have, and they're using that map to maintain control over the relationship. Think about it. They always seem to have a crisis right when you're about to do something for yourself. They remember to bring up that time they helped you whenever you try to create. They somehow always know exactly what to say to make you doubt your own perceptions. This isn't coincidence, it's strategy. But what if I told you that Niccolò Machiavelli solved this exact problem in the 1500s? His approach doesn't just help you understand narcissistic manipulation, it gives you the strategic tools to neutralize it completely. While modern therapy focuses on healing after the damage is done, Machiavelli's wisdom shows you how to protect yourself during the process and execute a clean break that leaves you stronger, not broken. This isn't just about ending a friendship. The stakes are much higher than you might realize. Your sense of self is being systematically eroded. Your other relationships are probably suffering because all your emotional energy is being drained by this one person. Your ability to trust your own judgment has been compromised. And perhaps most dangerously, you're learning to accept treatment that no healthy person would tolerate. In the early 1500s, Machiavelli observed the courts of Renaissance Italy, where survival depended on understanding the psychology of manipulation. These weren't abstract theories. They were life or death observations about how certain personalities operated. He watched nobles who would smile to your face while plotting your downfall, allies who would betray you the moment it served their interests, and charismatic leaders who left destruction in their wake while maintaining their reputation for charm. Sound familiar? Machiavelli was essentially documenting what we would now call narcissistic behavior patterns, but he was doing it in an environment where the stakes were political power, wealth, and sometimes literal survival. He saw that certain personalities, what we would now call narcissists, operated by specific, predictable patterns. They gained power not through genuine strength or competence, but through emotional manipulation, strategic information gathering, and carefully orchestrated psychological control. They were masters of what he called the art of appearing virtuous while practicing vice. Machiavelli wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." He understood that narcissists are masters of appearance management. They craft carefully curated personas designed to extract maximum emotional investment from their targets. They present themselves as the loyal friend, the wise advisor, the supportive companion. But the reality behind the mask is someone who views relationships purely in terms of what they can extract. Today, we call this narcissistic supply, the constant need for attention, admiration, emotional reactions, and validation from others. But Machiavelli's approach goes deeper than contemporary psychology because he understood something crucial. You can't heal from narcissistic abuse while you're still actively being abused. You need a strategic exit plan that accounts for the narcissist's predictable countermoves. Modern therapy often focuses on understanding why narcissists behave the way they do, or on healing your own wounds, or on improving communication. These approaches have value, but they miss the immediate practical problem. How do you safely disengage from someone who has intimate knowledge of your vulnerabilities and won't hesitate to weaponize them? It's like trying to negotiate with someone who's holding your diary hostage. They know your deepest fears, your greatest insecurities, and your strongest guilt triggers. Any attempt at honest communication just gives them more ammunition to use against you. Machiavelli's genius was recognizing that dealing with manipulative people requires strategic thinking, not just emotional processing. You need to understand their game better than they do, and you need to play it better than they do, but only long enough to get out safely. This isn't about becoming manipulative yourself. It's about refusing to be an easy target while you execute your escape plan. Machiavelli's first principle was, know your enemy better than they know themselves. Now, I know this sounds harsh when we're talking about a friend, but here's the uncomfortable truth. If someone is consistently draining your energy, manipulating your emotions, and prioritizing their needs over your well-being, they've already chosen to treat you as an adversary. You're just finally recognizing the battlefield you've been standing on. Think of your narcissistic friend as a prince without a kingdom. They desperately need subjects to validate their royal fantasy, and you've been unknowingly playing the role of loyal courtier. But here's what Machiavelli observed. These princes follow predictable patterns that you can learn to recognize and counter. Let me give you some specific examples of what this looks like in real life. When you first met them, they probably seemed incredibly charismatic and interested in your life. Maybe they remembered small details about your stories, asked follow-up questions about your goals, and made you feel truly seen. This intense early connection felt like finding your person, someone who finally understood you. But looking back, you might notice some red flags you dismissed at the time. They probably asked very specific questions about your past relationships, not out of genuine interest, but to understand your attachment patterns. They likely made subtle comments about your other friends or family members, planting seeds of doubt about those relationships. They positioned themselves as uniquely understanding compared to everyone else in your life. This is what Machiavelli called the seduction phase. They were gathering intelligence about your psychological makeup, your emotional triggers, and your loyalty patterns. They learned which compliments made you light up, which criticisms made you doubt yourself, and which guilt tactics made you change your behavior. Then came the gradual shift. Maybe you started noticing that conversations always seemed to center around their problems, their drama, their needs. When you tried to share your own struggles, they would either one-up you with bigger problems or offer advice that somehow made you feel worse about yourself. For example, if you mentioned feeling overwhelmed at work, instead of offering support, they might say something like, "At least you have a job you actually enjoy. I'm stuck in corporate hell with no way out." Suddenly, your valid stress became evidence of your privilege, and you found yourself comforting them instead of receiving support. Or maybe they developed a pattern of creating crises during important moments in your life. The night before your big presentation, they'd call with an emergency that required hours of emotional support. The week you were planning a vacation, they'd have a mental health crisis that made you feel guilty for leaving town. I know this might be difficult to accept, but recognizing these patterns is the key to your freedom. Your friend isn't necessarily consciously plotting against you. They're following unconscious programming that turns every relationship into a power dynamic where they must be dominant. Here's another pattern you might recognize. They have an uncanny ability to sense when you're pulling away and know exactly what to do to reel you back in. Maybe they'll suddenly become incredibly attentive and caring, reminding you of why you became friends in the first place. Or they'll have a major crisis that makes you feel heartless for even considering distance. They might also engage in what psychologists call trauma bonding, creating intense emotional experiences that make your nervous system associate them with both extreme stress and relief. One day they're creating drama that has you in tears. The next day they're the only person who can comfort you about the very drama they created. The recognition phase isn't about judging them or diagnosing them. It's about seeing the pattern clearly so you can develop a strategy to protect yourself. Machiavelli understood that until you recognize the game being played, you can't develop a strategy to win. Once you recognize the pattern, Machiavelli's next principle is strategic withdrawal. This isn't about dramatic confrontation or suddenly cutting contact. It's about gradually reclaiming your psychological territory without triggering their defensive mechanisms. Imagine you're living in a medieval castle, and you've realized that one of your regular guests has been mapping your defenses, studying your routines, and gathering information about your vulnerabilities. You wouldn't immediately throw them out. That would alert them to your awareness and potentially trigger retaliation. Instead, you'd quietly begin fortifying your defenses while maintaining the appearance of normalcy. This is exactly what strategic withdrawal looks like with a narcissistic friend. You begin by reducing your emotional availability without making it obvious. When they call with their latest drama, you listen but don't offer the intense emotional response they're seeking. You become what Machiavelli called pleasant but unremarkable. Let me give you specific examples of how this works. Instead of immediately responding to their texts with long, empathetic messages, you start responding with brief acknowledgements. When they text, "I'm having the worst day ever. My boss is such a nightmare." Instead of asking follow-up questions and offering detailed advice, you might respond with, "That sounds really frustrating. Hope it gets better." This accomplishes two things. You're not ignoring them, which would trigger their abandonment fears and escalate their behavior. But you're also not feeding their need for dramatic emotional reactions. You're becoming a less interesting source of narcissistic supply. Start implementing what I call strategic unavailability. If they're used to you being available whenever they need you, begin having other commitments. "I'd love to help you process this, but I'm actually meeting with my sister tonight." That sounds really challenging, but I'm in the middle of a work project this week and won't be able to talk until the weekend. The key is to make these unavailabilities feel natural and unrelated to them. You're not rejecting them. You're simply becoming a busier, more independent person with a fuller life. Here's a practical example. If they typically call you during your lunch break at work to vent about their morning, start scheduling actual lunch plans during that time. Don't tell them you're doing this to avoid their calls. Just be genuinely unavailable when they reach out. When they ask why you haven't been available, simply say, "I've been trying to be more social during my lunch breaks." Simultaneously, begin rebuilding connections they may have undermined. Remember those friends they subtly criticized or made you feel guilty for spending time with. Start reaching out to them. Begin saying yes to social invitations that don't include your narcissistic friend. For instance, if your narcissistic friend used to make comments like, "I don't know why you hang out with Sarah, she seems kind of superficial," start planning regular coffee dates with Sarah. Don't mention these plans to your narcissistic friend. Just quietly rebuild relationships they've tried to damage. This next part explains the most crucial aspect of strategic withdrawal. Take a deep breath, because understanding this will change everything. During this phase, they'll likely sense something is different and escalate their behavior. This might look like them becoming more demanding of your time, more critical of your choices, or suddenly more affectionate and appreciative. They might start having more emergencies that require your immediate attention, or they might begin love-bombing you with excessive compliments and attention. Machiavelli called this the desperate prince syndrome. When they feel their power slipping, they become more aggressive in their control tactic. They might say things like, "You've been so distant lately, I'm worried about you," or "I feel like our friendship is changing, and I don't understand why." This escalation is actually a good sign. It means your strategy is working, but you must resist the urge to either give in to their escalation or to confront them directly about what you're doing. Instead, maintain your pleasant but increasingly unavailable demeanor. Acknowledge their concerns without changing your behavior. "I appreciate you checking in. I've just been really focused on some personal projects lately." Machiavelli's third principle is perhaps the most psychologically sophisticated. Never reveal your true intentions while maintaining the appearance of continued loyalty. Think of yourself as a diplomat in a hostile court. You must be pleasant, non-threatening, and seemingly naive while secretly advancing your own agenda. The emotional neutralization phase is where you become immune to their manipulation tactic. Remember, they've been studying your emotional responses for months or years. They know exactly what to say to make you feel guilty, responsible, obligated, or sorry for them. But what if those buttons simply stop working? Here's the diplomatic approach. When they try to guilt trip you, respond with what Machiavelli called sympathetic deflection. Instead of defending yourself, explaining your position, or feeling guilty, you express concern for their emotional state while maintaining your boundaries. Let me give you specific scripts for common manipulation tactics. If they say something like, "I can't believe you're choosing work over our friendship," instead of explaining why work is important or apologizing for being busy, you might respond with, "It sounds like you're feeling really lonely lately. That must be really hard for you." Then change the subject or naturally end the conversation. If they try the classic guilt trip of bringing up past favors, "Remember when I helped you move apartments? I dropped everything for you." You could respond with, "You were such a good friend during that stressful time. I can tell you're going through a stressful time now too." Notice how you're acknowledging their past help without accepting that it creates a debt you must repay with unlimited availability. Here's another example. If they try to make you feel bad about spending time with other people, "You never hang out with me anymore, but you always have time for your work friends." You might say, "It sounds like you're feeling left out. I hate that you're feeling that way." Then, crucially, don't change your behavior to fix their feelings. This approach does several things simultaneously. It acknowledges their emotional state without accepting responsibility for it. It subtly redirects the conversation away from your behavior and toward their feelings. And it's completely disarming because they can't argue with your concern for their well-being. The genius of this approach is that it makes you a very unsatisfying target for manipulation. Narcissists need emotional reactions, whether positive or negative, to feel powerful. When you respond to their manipulation attempts with calm concern rather than guilt, defensiveness, or anger, you're essentially refusing to play their game. Now, I know this has been a lot to take in. Machiavelli's insights can feel overwhelming at first because they're so much deeper than what we usually hear about friendship dynamics. But this depth is exactly what's going to set you free. Are you ready to learn how to master the final phase? During emotional neutralization, you'll also need to master what I call strategic validation. This means giving them just enough emotional response to prevent suspicion while steadily reducing your actual emotional investment. Think of it like being a skilled actor playing a role convincingly enough that they don't suspect you're planning your exit, but internally, you're becoming increasingly detached from the drama they create. For example, when they tell you about their latest conflict with a coworker, instead of getting deeply invested in analyzing the situation and offering detailed advice, which is what they're used to from you, you might say, "Wow, workplace drama is always so draining. I hope it resolves itself soon." You're acknowledging their experience without getting emotionally hooked into it. Another crucial element is learning to recognize and deflect their fishing expeditions. These are moments when they're probing for information they can use against you later. They might ask seemingly innocent questions about your other relationships, your financial situation, or your insecurities. Instead of being completely open like you used to be, start giving more surface-level responses. If they ask, "How are things going with your family?" instead of sharing deep details about a conflict you're having with your sister, you might simply say, "Everyone's doing well, thanks for asking." If they press for more details, you can deflect with, "You know how families are. Always something going on. But we're managing." This isn't about being fake or manipulative. It's about protecting yourself from someone who has already chosen to manipulate you. You're simply refusing to hand them ammunition while you execute your exit strategy. Machiavelli's final principle is perhaps the most important. When you decide to end the relationship, do it cleanly, definitively, and without explanation. This sounds harsh, but here's why it's actually the most compassionate approach for both of you, and the safest approach for your mental health. Imagine you're a surgeon removing a tumor. You don't slowly chip away at it over months, having long conversations with the tumor about why it needs to leave. You make a clean, precise cut that removes the entire problem while minimizing damage to surrounding healthy tissue. A gradual fade-out gives them multiple opportunities to manipulate you back into the... A clean cut prevents this cycle from continuing. The final severance happens when you've already completed your strategic withdrawal and emotional neutralization phase. You've rebuilt your social network. You've become immune to their manipulation tactics. You've reduced your emotional investment to nearly zero, and you've proven to yourself that you can maintain boundaries with them. Now you're ready for the final step. Here's what this looks like in practice. Choose a moment when you're feeling emotionally neutral. Not angry, not hurt, not guilty, just clear and resolved. Send a brief, clear message that ends the friendship without opening the door for negotiation. Something like, "I've realized I need to step back from our friendship permanently. I wish you well, but I won't be continuing contact. Let me give you some alternative scripts depending on your specific situation. If you want to be even more brief, I'm ending our friendship. I wish you the best." If you feel you need to acknowledge the history, "I've valued our time as friends, but I've decided to end our friendship now. I won't be in contact going forward." Here's the crucial part that most people get wrong. Don't explain your reasons. Machiavelli understood that explanations are invitations for manipulation. Any reason you give will be dissected, argued with, minimized, or used against you. They'll either try to convince you that your reasons are invalid, promise to change their behavior, or turn your reasons into evidence of your own problems. For example, if you say, "I'm ending our friendship because you're too demanding of my time," they'll respond with something like, "I had no idea I was being demanding. I thought we were just close friends. Can't we work on this together? I promise I'll be more mindful." And suddenly you're back in the relationship, negotiating terms with someone who's already proven they don't respect your boundaries. Or if you say, "I need to focus on my mental health right now," they'll respond with, "I completely understand, and I want to support you through this. I'll give you space, but please don't cut me out completely. Let me know how I can help." Now they've positioned themselves as supportive and you as potentially unstable, and you're back to explaining and defending your decision. After you send this message, block them on all platforms immediately. Not tomorrow, not after they respond, not after you see what they say. Immediately. This includes phone numbers, social media accounts, email addresses, and any messaging apps you use. If you share mutual friends, you may also need to ask those friends not to share information about you or pass along messages. I know this might feel extreme, but here's what's happening psychologically. You're refusing to participate in a game where they hold all the advantages. You're choosing to end the relationship on your terms, not theirs. Expect what psychologists call an extinction burst, a period where they'll dramatically escalate their attempts to reconnect. This might include reaching out through mutual friends, creating fake social media accounts, showing up at places they know you'll be, or even having other people contact you on their behalf with messages about how much they miss you or how concerned they are about your well-being. They might send long emails analyzing your friendship and their behavior, promising to change. They might reach out during holidays or significant dates, hoping to trigger your guilt or nostalgia. They might even create emergencies or crises designed to make you feel obligated to respond. During this phase, maintain complete no contact. Don't respond to messages. Don't engage with mutual friends about them. Don't check their social media profiles. And don't investigate what they're saying about you to other people. Every response you give, even negative ones, teaches them that escalation works and encourages them to try harder. Remember, this extinction burst actually confirms that your assessment was correct. A healthy person who genuinely cared about your well-being would respect your clearly stated boundary, even if they were hurt by it. Someone who escalates their attempts to contact you after you've explicitly asked them to stop is demonstrating exactly the kind of boundary-violating behavior that made the relationship unhealthy in the first place. This isn't about punishing them or being cruel. It's about protecting yourself from someone who has demonstrated they will use your compassion, guilt, and loyalty against you. You're not responsible for managing their emotions about the end of the friendship. Your only responsibility is protecting your own mental health and honoring your own boundaries. Now let's get specific about implementation. Machiavelli's strategy isn't theoretical. It's a practical system you can start using today. Each phase has specific actions you can take immediately, and I'm going to give you exact scripts and timelines. Step 1. Intelligence gathering. Machiavelli's Know Your Enemy principle. Tonight, write down 3 specific patterns you've noticed in your friendship. Don't make general statements like, "They're selfish." Be specific. "They always interrupt my stories to tell their own." Or, "They only call when they need something." Or, "They bring up past favors whenever I try to set boundaries." If they always monopolize conversations, start timing how long you get to speak versus how long they speak during your next interaction. Use the stopwatch on your phone discreetly. This isn't about confronting them with data. It's about gathering objective evidence that will strengthen your resolve when they try to make you doubt your perceptions. Step 2. Strategic unavailability. Starting tomorrow, become 20% less available. If you usually respond to their texts within 10 minutes, start responding within an hour. If you usually say yes to their invitations, Start having other commitments about once every 4 times they ask. If you typically call them back immediately, start waiting until the next day. When they text you about their latest drama, finish whatever you're doing first, whether that's eating lunch, watching a show, organizing your closet, or just sitting quietly for 20 minutes before responding. This simple delay begins retraining both of you about the pace and urgency of your relationship. Step 3. Emotional neutralization. This week, practice sympathetic deflection at least 3 times. When they try to make you feel guilty, responsible, or obligated, respond with concern for their well-being while maintaining your boundaries. Write down the exact phrases you'll use so you're prepared. If they say, "You never have time for me anymore," instead of explaining your schedule or apologizing, respond with, "It sounds like you're feeling really lonely lately. That must be really hard." Then change the subject to something neutral or end the conversation naturally. Practice this phrase until it feels natural. Step 4. Network rebuilding. Over the next month, reconnect with 2 people your narcissistic friend has subtly discouraged you from seeing. Send them a text today saying something like, "I've been thinking about you and would love to catch up soon." Don't mention your narcissistic friend during these reconnections. If your narcissistic friend used to make comments about how boring your coworker Sarah is, text Sarah today, "Hey, I was just thinking about that funny story you told about your cat. Would you like to grab coffee this week?" Start rebuilding these relationships without announcing what you're doing. Step 5. Documentation. Start keeping a brief record of your interactions with them, not for confrontation purposes, but to prevent gaslighting. Write down 1 sentence after each interaction. Called at 2 p.m. about work drama. Conversation lasted 45 minutes. I provided advice and emotional support. This helps you see patterns and trust your own perceptions. Step 6. Support system preparation. Identify 1 person in your life who can provide emotional support during your exit process. This should be someone who understands narcissistic behavior and won't try to convince you to work things out with your friend. Step 7. Final severance. When you're ready, and only when you're ready, send a brief, clear message ending the friendship. Write it in advance when you're feeling emotionally neutral. Keep it under 25 words. Block them immediately after sending. Start today by identifying patterns and writing them down. Tomorrow, begin strategic unavailability. This week, implement emotional neutralization and reconnect with 1 old friend. Over the next month, continue reducing emotional investment while rebuilding your social network. Execute final severance only when you feel genuinely ready. Not angry, not hurt, just clear and resolved. The key to success is treating this like a gradual lifestyle change, not a dramatic intervention. You're slowly becoming a person who has healthier boundaries, a fuller social life, and less tolerance for emotional manipulation. And that person naturally outgrows relationships that don't serve them. So what did Machiavelli teach us about ending dangerous friendships? 3 revolutionary insights that change everything. First, recognition without strategy is powerless. You can understand that someone is narcissistic. Read every article about narcissistic behavior and perfectly identify all their manipulation tactics. But without a strategic approach to disengagement, you'll remain trapped in their cycles. Knowledge alone doesn't set you free. Strategic action does. Machiavelli showed us that understanding your opponent is only valuable if you use that understanding to develop winning tactics. Second, direct confrontation with a narcissist is almost always counterproductive and potentially dangerous. While conventional psychology might encourage honest communication and expressing your feelings, Machiavelli understood that manipulative people use your honesty as ammunition against you. Every vulnerability you share becomes a weapon they can use later. Strategic withdrawal protects you during the vulnerable exit process by denying them the emotional reactions they need to maintain control. And most importantly, you have the absolute right to end any relationship that consistently diminishes your well-being, regardless of the other person's intentions, needs, or emotional reactions. This isn't cruelty, selfishness, or failure to be understanding. It's essential self-preservation. You don't owe anyone continued access to your emotional energy, especially someone who has proven they will exploit that access. This is why Machiavelli's approach succeeds, where conventional therapy often falls short. While modern psychology focuses on understanding the narcissist's childhood trauma, analyzing your own attachment patterns, or improving communication skills, Machiavelli's strategy gives you immediate, practical tools to protect yourself while you're still in the relationship. When you apply Machiavelli's insights to narcissistic friendships, you don't just survive the experience. You emerge stronger, wiser, and significantly more skilled at recognizing manipulation in the future. You move from being a victim of someone else's psychological patterns to being the strategic architect of your own emotional safety. You develop what I call diplomatic immunity, the ability to interact with difficult people without getting emotionally hooked by their drama. Most importantly, you learn to trust your own perceptions again. Narcissistic friends are masters of making you doubt your own reality, but Machiavelli's strategic approach proves to you that your instincts were correct all along. If Machiavelli's insights into narcissistic friendships resonated with you, subscribe and hit the notification bell to join our community of philosophical healers who understand that sometimes the oldest wisdom offers the most cutting-edge solutions. Your philosophical journey toward emotional freedom requires multiple perspectives and strategies. Each type of narcissistic relationship has unique challenges, and philosophy has specific tools for each situation. Tell me in the comments, which of Machiavelli's strategies hit you the hardest? The strategic withdrawal, the emotional neutralization, or the final severance? And what specific situation are you dealing with that brought you to this video? I read every comment and often create follow-up videos based on your experiences. Remember, every tyrant in history was eventually defeated by someone who understood their tactics better than they understood themselves. Your narcissistic friend isn't special, and they're not uniquely powerful. They're just using a very old playbook that Machiavelli decoded centuries ago. The strategies exist, the wisdom exists. Now it's time to use them. You don't have to stay trapped in a relationship that diminishes you. You have more power than you realize, and Machiavelli just showed you exactly how to use it.